Hi everyone, welcome to my wood lemon kit tutorial. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, here is the finished lemon and it just hangs on your door kind of like a little welcome wreath. So if you haven't ordered your kit yet and you want to paint on your own at home, you still can, or if you aren't feeling very crafty, you're more than welcome to order from me and I'll paint it for you. So to get started, you're going to need your wood lemon. And you can see here I've outlined where your leaves are to make it easier for you. Included with your kit is some twine for hanging your lemon on your door, a bow already made. I know a lot of people don't like making bows, so I have it made for you already. And then your stencil for your hello word. You also need a few paintbrushes, a small detail one, medium, and large. Your plate for your paint. And then for this one, I'm going to be using yellow, obviously, for the lemon, green for the leaf. I use sap green, which is kind of like a grass green, but you can use any color green you'd like. And then black for our little details, and white as well. Of course, you'll need a napkin to wash your brushes out, and then a water cup as well. For the very last stage of putting our ribbon on, you'll also need some glue. I use Gorilla Super Glue. It works really well and holds, but you can also use hot glue. You could just use regular glue if you want. I just like the security of super glue, so we'll just need that for the end. To get started, we are going to first paint the leaves of our lemon. So I'm going to use my larger brush of the three, and when you're painting on wood, you really want to make sure that you're adding water to your paint. The wood soaks up the paint a lot easier and quicker than it does a canvas, so you want to make sure that you add just a touch more water than you typically would when you're painting on canvas, so that way it doesn't dry as fast on the wood. And then you're just going to start and paint a nice base coat of green over top of all of your leaves, and you're also painting this little stem green as well. So it's all going to be green. Again, whatever kind of green you want. I'm using this sap green, which looks like a grass color. You could also use something a little darker like an olive, or you could do something lighter like a lime green. Whatever your preference is and how bright or how dark you want those leaves to appear. So I'm just painting everything in with one nice base coat of green, including the stem, and staying within those pencil lines. And the other thing you have to think about when you're painting with any of these wood forms is there is depth to it. So meaning you can see that 3/4 of an inch depth there. So you can either one, leave it natural so you just see the wood, or what I do is I just paint it so it looks like the color and pattern are extended to the sides. I think this gives a more finished and polished look, but you can do whatever you want to do. So go ahead and paint just a nice base coat of green for your sides if you're painting the sides, and then the leaves and stem as well. And then once we're done with that, I'll show you what next to do. All right, now that you have a nice base coat of green on your leaves, stem, and the sides if you're painting them with paint, what we're going to do next is add a little bit of detail and depth to our leaf. So you can see there's some lighter shades in here just to kind of give them a little bit of dimension so they're not flat looking. So what you're going to do to achieve that, if you want to add it, is with your green, you're going to paint another coat over top. You want to make sure that your paint is wet, so it hasn't dried yet. So paint another coat if it's dried, and while that is wet, you want to immediately grab your medium size brush and dip it in some white, and then you're going to brush right over top of that wet green. You have to make sure that your paint is wet when you do this, otherwise it's just going to look like you painted a white stripe over top of it. And we don't want it to look stripy, we want it to look more natural so it blends together. So you can see that there, how it blends easily together. There's not harsh lines to make it look striped. If this is too bright for you, you can always add some more of that green right over top, and that will help lighten it up and not look so contrasting or stark. So that softens it up just a little bit. So we're going to do the same to the other side. We're going to paint the top leaf just with a nice coat of green, so that way our paint is wet. So when we add the white over top, it looks blended. Again, this is your preference on how much you want to add or how little you want to add. You don't have to add any extra colors if you don't want to. I just kind of like the extra look it gives. Doesn't look as flat and plain. So just a few details goes a long way. You don't have to add too much. Now if you noticed with my finished lemon, I have these black lines here for some extra depth. We're gonna wait until the very end and just do all of our black at once. So you can see there's black lines around the edge and our word is black. I'm gonna hold off so that way we only have to use the black once and not wash our brush too much. So after you've finished with your leaves, we're gonna wash our brushes really well, and we're gonna move on to the yellow of our lemon. Now for my lemon, all I did was use the lemon straight from the tube. This is cadmium yellow. You can also use like a lemon yellow or whatever you have lying around the house. So you're gonna wash your brush really well. You wanna make sure there's no green left in your brush. Otherwise, your yellow and your green are gonna mix together and you're just not gonna have a nice, bright, clean yellow for your lemon. So wash your brush really well. Should come off clean when you're dabbing it on your napkin. And then we're gonna move to our yellow color. And we're gonna paint the entire lemon just a nice solid base coat of yellow. Again, you wanna make sure that you're adding water to your yellow pile that you add to your plate or your paint palette, just because the wood soaks up the paint a lot quicker than it does on a canvas. So we're just gonna brush yellow right over top of our wood. You wanna make sure too, as you're brushing the yellow on, to not, one, overlap your green leaves, but two, you wanna make sure your leaves are completely dry before taking your brush right against that edge. If they're not dry and they're still wet, then the two colors are going to mix together and it's just gonna look dirty looking. So make sure those edges are really dry before you paint right next to it. You wanna make sure if you've painted the sides of your leaf, you wanna paint the sides of your lemon as well. So go ahead and get a nice solid yellow base coat on your lemon, and then we'll go from there. All right, so now that you have finished your leaves and your lemon, the next thing we're going to do is add the polka dots that are on the lemon. Now this is a really good time to cover up maybe any mistakes that happened. Like you can see here, I got a little bit of green on the yellow part of my lemon. So if that happens to you, don't sweat it because you can easily cover it up with the light yellow dots we're going to be adding. So what you're going to do is, with the yellow that you had on your plate, if you have any extra left, sorry, it's kind of bright to see, but you're gonna add some white to make it a lighter shade of yellow. Again, make sure you add water to this. And then you're just going to use your medium-sized brush here, and you're gonna go through and add polka dots all over your lemon. You can add these as big or as small as you'd like. You can add as many or as little, whatever suits your fancy. And I'm sorry if you hear some background noise. The weather is so nice that my hubby is out weed eating and mowing, so we're multitasking in our house tonight to get things done. So you can see how I've added that dot right over where I had that green mistake, and you can't even see it anymore. So go through and just add a bunch of light colored polka dots to your lemon, again, as many or as little, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, now that you have finished all of your circle dots on your lemon. So it looks somewhat like that. One thing I want to stress is for you not to stress about your circles. If you look at my dots, they're not all perfectly round, they're not all the same size, but that kind of goes along with the playful feel of the lemon we're creating, so do not stress about that. It will still look super cute when you're all done with it. The next thing we're going to do is move on to our black. So you can see that, sorry, my phone keeps saying it's going to die. You can see that I've added some black lines here, just a few on each leaf, and that just gives it a little bit more pop. And then I am adding dashed black lines around the edge, just for a very playful, fun look. So I'm gonna finish those black lines off. Again, do not stress if these are not all the same size, if they're not all the same thickness, because really, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just for a playful look. So just like so. Get my brush out of the way for you. So you can see not every line is exactly the same. You're just creating a playful feel. So the next couple things we have to do are, one, we need to add our twine, and we also need to add our hello word. You don't want to add this though until everything is completely dry, because when you lay the stencil down, it's kind of like a sticker. If you lay it down too soon and it's wet, then it's going to remove some of your paint. So we're going to hold off on this until it's completely dry. In the meantime, we can add our twine at the top. This is what we're going to use to hang the hello sign. So we are using twine for our string. If you have something else at home and want to use it, go for it. What you want to do though is make sure you twist between your two fingers, just twist the end so it's really tight and you don't have any frays. This is going to help it go through the hole here that we have drilled. So just push it through. And then what we're going to do, hopefully y'all can see this, is we're just going to create a knot. Just like this, we're just creating a knot. Once you have a knot, you're going to tie 2 more knots in the same spot. This is going to make your knot thicker, so that way the twine doesn't end up pulling through the holes we have drilled. So I do 3. You're probably safe with 2, but I just want to ensure that it's not going anywhere. So that's what 3 knots kind of looks like. I'm just going to pull it through, and you can see now it's not going to pull through that drill hole that we have. So you're going to do the same on the other side. Make sure to twist your twine. I am trying to twist over top of my tablecloth and not over top of my lemon, because parts of my lemon are still wet, so if you're twisting over top of it, some of these hairs from the twine could get stuck in your paint. So just be cautious of that. So again, twist and push through your drill hole. Now you can see right here how it's getting stuck. The twine is falling apart. So what you need to do is just grab some scissors. Grab some scissors and just cut that end. That way you get rid of those hairs that are just wanting to bunch up. You can always add a little bit of water too to help as you're twisting it to make it nice and smooth. And then just push through. That went through a lot easier after I cut it. And then same thing on this side. You're just going to tie it in a knot. And I'm doing it 3 times so I have a nice size knot so it doesn't go anywhere. And then once you have your knot, you can pull it through. This allows it to hang. So you'll probably have a little bit of extra twine on the ends of your knots here just hanging off. If that bothers you, if you don't like it, just take your scissors and cut some of it off so it's a little bit shorter. You don't want to cut too short so that your knot comes out. So just a little bit so the tail is not as long. So now they're just a little bit shorter so they're not, it's not such a long tail. The other thing you can do while you're waiting for your lemon to dry is you can glue your burlap bow on. So in my lemon, it's just in the top corner here. It actually covers one of the hanging knots and overlaps the leaf a little bit. So with our super glue or Gorilla Glue or hot glue, whatever you have, you're just gonna add a little bit of glue to the back of your bow here. So I just have a little bit of glue right there. And then you're just gonna stick it in place where you want your bow to be. So just hold it in place until your glue has set a little bit. You don't wanna let go and it run everywhere. Super glue usually dries pretty quickly, and so does hot glue, so don't have to hang it or hold on to it for too long. But just put it in place wherever you want your bow. If your tails are too long, you can always trim those and make them a little bit shorter. Or if you want tails that are longer, you can make them a little bit longer. It's your preference. So while that's drying, you can lay it flat, so that way it dries completely. Rest of your lemon should be fairly dry, especially when you're painting on wood. Your acrylic paint is going to dry a lot faster than, say, on your canvas. So once it's completely dry, and the best way to test that is to just touch it lightly with your fingertips or your palms, so, fingertips that are clean. You can see mine are a little painted, so I'm choosing a finger that's clean. And if you press down on it gently, no paint should lift off, and then you shouldn't have any fingerprints in your paint as well. So once it's dry, we're going to do our hello. And what you have here is transfer vinyl. So it's just a stencil cut out of vinyl. And you're going to remove the backing. So as you start peeling, this is your backing. It's pretty shiny and smooth, and your finger can glide across it. And then you have your blue, which is your stencil, and the top layer is your transfer paper. So you're removing the backing, so that way you just have your blue stencil and your transfer paper. And then you're gonna gently place it on your lemon wherever you want. Mine is a little slanted or tilted. It kind of goes with the edge of the lemon here. But if you want to place it in the center or at the top, whatever your preference is. So I'm just going to do the same as I did in my first one. I'm going to place it along the bottom and kind of tilt it. And then I'm going to lightly, with my fingers, just rub down on the stencil. You might have to use your nails a little bit. You want to get this in place so that way it doesn't move at all. But you don't want to press so hard that it's hard to peel off once you're done painting and removes any of your paint. So I'm just using my nails to gently scratch it on there. You can use a debit card, credit card if you want as well. You could use the end of your brush just real lightly, but your fingertips do just fine. So I've lightly got this placed on, and once my stencil is on there in the place I want it to be, I am going to remove the transfer tape. So this is the layer that's on top of the blue stencil. So you're just going to lightly find a corner to peel off, and you're going to gently pull your transfer tape off just like that. You can see how I'm holding it against the wood instead of lifting it like this. I'm holding it down against the wood to peel it off. This helps ensure that you peel just the transfer tape and not the blue stencil off. So the transfer tape is removed, and now it's just our stencil. And with our black paint and our larger brush, we are going to grab just a little bit of paint. I'm not dipping my whole brush, just a little bit. And you're going to lightly dab over top. You don't want to stab it, you don't want to press into the stencil because you don't want to get any of your bristles underneath of your stencil. Otherwise you're not going to have a nice clean line. So you're just going to lightly, with a light hand on top, brush some black paint. I'm using black for my letters. You can definitely use whatever color you want. Something nice to contrast the yellow so you can see the word hello. But I'm just going to, and this doesn't take a lot of paint, especially if you're using black, since black is so dark, it's not gonna take a huge coat. If you were using a lighter color, say you wanted to do white for your words, you would have to add a couple layers just because white is such a light color. You would see maybe your polka dots or your yellow lemon underneath of it, so you'd have to do a couple coats. But with our black, it just takes a nice thin layer and you won't see any of those dots or yellow underneath. Again, try not to stab your stencil and get bristles underneath. We want to have nice, clean, sharp lines. Typically, the best tool to use when you're using stencils is a sponge brush. It's kind of made of foam or sponge, whatever you want to call it. That's the best because then you don't take the chance of bristles getting underneath your stencil. However, I ran out of my sponge brushes, so I'm just using a paintbrush and I'm just using it real lightly on top. So once we have our entire stencil covered, you want to make sure too not to get any paint outside of your stencil because then you'll get black paint on your areas you don't want any. So just make sure you stay within your stencil guideline. And you can see after I'm done dabbing the paint on, I brush over it lightly just to decrease any like puddles or globs of paint that we have on there. So the whole stencil is painted, making sure my paint is within my stencil parameters. And once you have completely painted it, let it dry for just a couple seconds, and then you're going to lightly find a corner and start pulling your stencil off. So you want to be gentle with this process. One, so we don't get paint outside of our nice sharp lines, and two, so we don't pull any paint off of the wood that we've already painted. We don't want any of our yellow to pull up. So you're just going to pull back lightly, just like we did when we were removing the transfer tape. And as you pull that off, it will reveal the letters that you just filled in with black. You want to make sure you kind of guide your stencil off so that way you don't get any extra black paint on your lemon. So once you have that off, the only other thing you need to do is real gently pull off where the O and the E are, so that way you can reveal the entire letter. If you have sharp nails, you can use that. If you have an X-Acto knife, you can use it to kind of lift it off. You can try and use the corner of your brush. You just want to be really careful on this part because your black paint is still a little wet, so you want to make sure that you don't ruin your letters. Really anything sharp, scissors, just be careful. Don't want your kids to do this. But just lightly press it to get a corner lifted so that way you can get underneath of it to pull it off. So that's one pulled off. Sometimes this is the most difficult part. If you have a vinyl machine at home and you have a tool that kind of looks like a hook, you can use that as well to pull them off. But anything sharp will work. A knife as well. I'm just using what I have right here next to me. Remember, we're just being careful at this part so that way we don't ruin any of our letters or get extra black all over our lemon. And this one is being stubborn, it doesn't want to come off. All right, so once you've removed all of those pieces, then you have your final Hello Lemon wreath. Pretty simple, huh? Very cute and appropriate for the nice spring weather that we're having. When I finish my wood creations, I also like to spray them down with a polyurethane spray, just like a top finishing coat. It just gives it a little extra shine. You can kind of see there with the light, it's a little shinier, but it's not necessary. So if you don't have it, no worries. If you want to add it, you're more than welcome to. This is your preference. All right, there's your lemon. So if you have any questions, feel free to message me. Otherwise, enjoy. Thanks, guys.